and welcome to KXAN Plus. My name is Jennifer Sanders, and I am your host. Esme is out today, so I'm your host for Nick's First Warning, and the star of the show is right here.
Hey, you're the star of the show.
No,
I'm so excited for you to be on this with us this week.
No, this is exciting, and I love your blog, your most recent blog. It is at the top of our leaderboard, so one of the most viewed web stories, and it talks about the July rains and how that really changes the rest of the summer. So, Nick, as we start, can you first just give our viewers a context about July? Because typically that's the second driest month of the year.
Yeah, and of course people know summer as being hot and triple digits and no rain in sight. And of course lately it's been anything but that. So let me show you what the weather pattern is usually in the month of July here in Central Texas. Now, we're summarizing this in a somewhat simplified fashion. It's never always the same, but this is a general idea where we have high pressure either right over Texas or just to our west, and high pressure sinking air that prevents the rising motion that develops not just clouds, but also leads to rain and storms. So usually when that high is either on top of Texas or just to the west, that air is sinking so much that it prevents any rain from forming. And that's why July can be such a hot month. No clouds, no rain. The sinking air also helps to elevate the heat. So that's what usually happens here in Central Texas and really throughout a lot of Texas here during the summer months. But what's been happening over the last couple of weeks is we've got high pressure to the west of us and high pressure well to our east. And here we are, we've been in the middle, and that's meant that we didn't have the sinking air overhead that allows for more lift in the atmosphere that generates some rain and thunderstorms, because we've still had heat in place that have helped to aid in that lift. And we've been able to see some sneaky storm systems creep in between these areas of high pressure, not being blocked from coming our way, but sort of a path is opened up for them to move in. We saw that with the leftovers of Tropical Storm Barry around the July 4th weekend, and then we saw it again this past weekend. And then the second point here is that there's no strong steering flow. So once those storm systems enter Central Texas, they have nothing to really kick them out all that quickly. So once our rainy pattern began, it has taken a long time before it ends. And we're finally starting to see the ending of it here today. And we've got much drier weather ahead. So this pattern has really been the difference between what is a usual July for us here in Central Texas and what we've had so far. And of course, Jennifer, we've already talked about in the month of June. It was usually still kind of a wet month, but we didn't get much rain in June. And it was a pretty hot month as well, one of the top 20 hottest Junes on record. And we had 2 triple-digit days in May. So months that are usually not as hot were hotter. And now that we're in a month that's usually hotter, we haven't been. And of course, many people appreciate the fact that we've had the rain. But of course, we can't forget about the devastation that all this relentless rain has caused, because too much of a good thing has been a terrible thing for so many families here in Central Texas lately.
Yeah, and speaking of them, our hearts and our prayers are certainly with all of the families across Central Texas, especially in Kerr County. We have seen devastation, widespread devastation across our area, and that cleanup effort certainly continues. So we know that this was record rainfall, Nick. How much rain did we see in our area?
Yeah, so let's just dive into the numbers for Austin's Camp Mabry, first of all, because parts of the Hill Country have seen 15 to 25 inches since the beginning of the month. But even at Austin's Camp Mabry, we've had way above normal. Since July 1st, I should say, we should have had a little over an inch of rainfall, and I don't know how easy it is for us to get rid of the banner at the bottom of the screen there, but since July 1st, we should have had just about an inch of rain, but what we've had here this month instead, 5.7 inches of rain. It meant that the first week of July was the wettest first week of July ever, and now that we're 2 weeks into July, it's the second wettest first 2 weeks of July ever. More than 4.5 inches of extra rainfall at Austin's Camp Mabry alone. And Austin pales in comparison to some of those rainfall totals that we've had in the Hill Country. And you can see there, we also are in a rainfall surplus for the year today. This meant that, we are, even if it doesn't rain for the whole rest of the month, this will be the 10th wettest July on record in Austin, and all of this rain coming in now the first 2 weeks of the month. So no more rain. Still would be a wettest, top 10 wettest July on record. And remember, Austin had way less rain than the Hill Country, where we saw 20, 25-inch rainfall totals over the first 2 weeks of the month. So you think these numbers are sort of historical? Well, the numbers in the Hill Country are higher than this and devastatingly so.
Okay, so when we talk about this rain, it's interesting because I feel like in the month of June and really May, we were talking about a drought. And so what does this rainfall mean for the drought that we were in?
Yeah, so we have seen big changes in our drought here lately. This is not the right graphic. I can grab a different one. This is the difference in the drought over the last couple of weeks. And in fact, I'll just show you what the drought looked like in the last report. And you can see that there is not much drought left. And this does not include any of the rain that has fallen this past weekend. This is just last Thursday's drought report. So any of the additional rain that fell over the weekend will be factored into this coming Thursday's drought report. But all of those areas like in the metro, in much of Gillespie, Blanco counties, they're considered abnormally dry, but that doesn't actually mean you're in drought. Where you see the areas that are in drought, that's when you get into southern Gillespie County, where we've got either a moderate or severe drought. You can see that legend there at the top of your screen. So either a level 1 or level 2 drought here in central Texas, but much of the area either abnormally dry, which isn't not in drought, or not even dry at all, which is much of the Hill Country, Williamson County, Milam County, Lee County, parts of Bastrop, and even northeastern Travis County, not even abnormally dry. Now, some of you may be thinking, well, how can you be abnormally dry in Gillespie County or parts of Travis County when we've had so much rain lately? This is not abnormally dry over the last couple of weeks. Of course, we've all been abnormally wet, historically so. But these drought monitors, they take into account not just short-term rainfall amounts, but long-term rainfall amounts. And this drought has been growing for years, technically, in central Texas. We've had some ebbs and flows where the drought has improved, almost gone, and then come back. But we've never truly been out of drought for several years now. So that's why it takes a lot of rain to get out of drought, because it took a lot of a rainfall deficit to get into a drought. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some additional improvements in the drought when we get another update here this Thursday. So especially in parts of the Hill Country. But even Hays County, southern Travis County, Bastrop County's had some rain, just not to the same amount as the Hill Country has had even over the weekend.
Okay, and speaking of impact, let's talk about our lakes. Eric Henriksen, he did a story about that, and it was so fascinating to see how many people had lived in the area for years, for decades, and they were just in awe, in shock about the levels our lakes had risen to. How did this rain really impact our lakes?
Well, lakes have been going up tremendously, so much so that yesterday they had to release water from Lake Buchanan because it was almost full. It's 98% full. Full is technically when it reaches 1,020 feet of elevation. And the lake releases at Buchanan Dam have been preventing it from quite reaching full, even though if they hadn't released the water, it would have been full by now over the last few days. We do expect that it will reach that full level as the inflows start to stabilize. But even Lake Travis has been rising significantly as well. It's now just about 5 feet above average. Yesterday was the first time in 4 years that Lake Travis has been above average. Yesterday was also the first time in 6 years that Lake Buchanan had to open floodgates. And in fact, LCRA opened 4 floodgates at one time for Lake Buchanan. That has been reduced to 2 today. So we have not seen lake levels like this in quite some time. Lake Travis continues to rise, especially as more of that water doesn't just flow in from Llano River, but also flows in from upstream from Lake Buchanan as its leftovers are getting pushed downstream toward Lake Travis too. But even if Lake Travis reaches full, there is a separate flood pool, full level of Lake Travis, that allows it to absorb and hold much more water than is considered full. There's the conservation pool, which is here, And then there's the flood pool, which is here. So it really can store way more water than it has now before any water has to go downstream from Mansfield Dam and toward close to Austin. So we've got a good comfort level there that even if Lake Travis gets full or above, that it can hold a lot more water than it has now.
Okay. So looking ahead towards the rest of the month,
Yeah.
a drier outlook, right?
Yeah, let me tell you what is typical for the summer.
Okay.
And this can sort of put this in perspective for you for what we usually see. These are our average summer high temperatures. Of course, we have triple digits, but that's not average. That's sort of part of the up and down, right? June average highs of 93, July average highs of 97, August average highs of 98. And by the way, we have not had a day this month so far where our average, where our temperature has been above average yet. Of course, all the rain and cloud cover has kept the temperatures down. We usually don't get much rain in July. It's our second driest month of the year, coming after February, which is our driest month of the year. So this is truly unusual to get this much rain in the month of July. And then you can see we do tend to get wetter as we head through the month of August. So that brings me to your question about what's going to happen going forward. Well, I showed you, and I'll go back to it, that initial map I had of the weather pattern that has been preventing us from getting so hot and from allowing the rainfall to get back into central Texas, right? So that keep an eye on that high to the east of us, because now I'm going to show you that as we go through the next several days and into the weekend, that high is going to build in from east to west and help to bring that sinking air back to central Texas and really much of the state that stops the development of clouds, blocks the intrusion of tropical systems, at least for the time being, and at least for the most part. It also helps to heat up the air as well. So as we head through the week and into the weekend, as this high pressure starts to move in and makes more of a permanent settlement here in central Texas, we're going to find that temperatures start to inch back up. We'll be entering what people would consider is actually closer to normal for this time of year. Now, normal is 97 for the next week for average highs, and we're still not at normal here from our forecast until we get into Sunday. We're very close to normal, don't get me wrong. 96 is here Wednesday, Thursday, 94 Friday, thanks to some extra clouds, and then we're back to 96 Saturday, and then we start creeping a little bit above normal as we get into early next week. But for those wondering, okay, where's the typical July weather? I don't remember it ever raining like this in July. Well, that weather really begins tomorrow.
Okay. And so something that you referenced in your blog that I thought was super interesting was wet soil and the impacts that has.
Yeah. And wet soil is going to do some things to make it more comfortable and some things to make it less comfortable here over the next few days. And I can explain why. The moisture in the ground, the sun will be working to evaporate that as the sun does, right? But as it evaporates the moisture in the soil, that moisture then goes in the air and it makes the air more humid. So it's actually going to make our days much more uncomfortable than if we were in drought and had a lot of dry heat. You know, we'll often say it's not the heat, it's the humidity, right?
Yes.
Well, we're going to get more of that humidity because of all the moisture in the ground starting to evaporate and making it into the to the air more. So that means more humid days and also more humid nights. And when you have more humidity in the air at night, overnight lows are usually warmer. So warmer nights on the way. But when you have more humidity during the day, the air is not able to heat up as much because it contains so much moisture. So that means that compared to a day where the air is drier, the air temperatures will not be as hot. Now, I'm not going to say cold. I'm just going to say cooler in quotes, because upper 90s to near triple digits is still hot.
Yes.
It's just not as hot as it would be if we didn't have all that moisture and humidity in the air. So you can plan on high temperatures not being as hot as it would be if we didn't have that moisture in the air. But the compensation aspect is the higher humidity is going to make it feel hotter. That heat index, the feels like temperature, will be in the triple digits still, even if the air temperatures are at 98 or 99. On the beneficial side, of course, we've seen the improvements in the drought. There will be a lower wildfire risk too, but we'll get more mosquitoes with all the standing water around as well. Maybe you've already noticed them because we've had more rain in early July and a little bit at the end of June. More mosquitoes around now. Well, they're just going to get worse here with all the standing water that we've had around.
And so looking at the temperature outlook really for the rest of the summer, you said it'll start to feel like a typical July starting next week.
Yeah, I mean, really starting as we get toward the end of this week. It'll feel closer to normal. It'll look more like normal with early clouds giving way to a lot of sunshine. But yes, back to those temperatures again, approaching average here as we head through the end of this week, and then getting back to near, if not above average as we get into next week. We don't have any rain in our forecast with the exception of a low 10% rain chance here on Friday. And then the extended rainfall outlooks that just came out, these update every day. So the one in my blog is actually the one that I put in last night. I'll put a new one in the blog here today. But it's leaning drier than normal for almost that last week there of July. And then from a temperature perspective, leaning warmer than normal during that period as well. So that means likely upper 90s and possibly triple digits, of which we haven't had triple digits since May, would you believe it? We've only had 2 so far. And our concerns in May were that we would, if we've already had 2 in May, this is going to be a rough summer. And, if we had not had this 2-week period of wet weather, some of that tropical moisture from Tropical Storm Barry coming in and sort of disrupting what is a typical summer pattern, then we think it would have been a hotter than normal summer. It was a hotter than normal June, which is the first month of meteorological summer. Yeah. But now we're starting to get back to what is a bit more common here in the month of July and eventually into early August, which is the heat and the lack of rainfall. So we'll start to see that return here very soon this week. And then we think that's going to continue here through the end of the month. And of course, we're always going to keep an eye on the tropics.
Yes.
Because a tropical system it's sort of like the fly in the, well, no, I don't know if that's the right phrase either, but it's sort of the wild card. Maybe that's the better phrase.
Yeah.
That everything can be going as you expect, and then a tropical system comes in like we had, dumps a lot of rain, adds moisture, disrupts the flow of other things, and then you've got a completely different sort of pattern than you were originally expecting. And there is, just lastly here, there is some development in the tropics that we're watching now. We mentioned this last night at 9 and 10, sort of as we've been easing away from our flooding concerns, starting to think about what's happening next. There's a system crossing over Florida now that'll reemerge in the Gulf, and it's got a 40% chance of becoming our next tropical depression or stronger. If it becomes a tropical storm, it would be getting the name Dexter. And all of these lines here represent different computer model suggestions of where the center of the storm would be. And it doesn't have it over the Gulf for that long, which generally would keep the storm on the weaker side of things. The more time it spends in the Gulf, the more time it has to grow and strengthen. So limited time over the Gulf is a good thing. And generally speaking, most of this moisture is going to be avoiding Texas, although East Texas may get in a little bit of rain. We think most of the wet weather from this is going to head into Louisiana. So that's the next thing to watch. But generally speaking, we think, knock on wood, if you hear me, that we're thinking it's going to be pretty quiet here locally starting tomorrow. Of course, we're still watching out for our hill country neighbors with a flood watch until 9 o'clock tonight.
Okay, Nick, thank you so much. No rest for the weary. It has been a very busy summer for you all, and we appreciate everything you do, the long hours that you put in, tracking all of those different models. We thank you for that. And of course, you can read Nick's latest weather blog on our website at KXAN.com. But thank you so much for joining us here on KXAN Plus for Nick's First Warning.